And welcome everybody to Beyond the Trailer Park episode 191. And tonight we're going to talk to a regular, Tris Mamone, and we're going to hit a couple hot button issues. Understatement.
Yep.
So, Miss Morgan, welcome back.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you, especially for tonight.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we'll need your legal expertise.
Oh, that's scary.
And Trish, happy birthday.
Thank you, thank you.
It's 2 weeks in a row we've had birthday peoples on the air.
Hmm.
So, new trend maybe? I don't know. So,
Yeah, maybe. Whose birthday is it next Mondays?
I don't
I
know.
don't know if anybody
Hmm.
has a birthday next week.
I'll
I'll have to
find
check
somebody.
Facebook.
Oh no, well, Marie probably wouldn't appreciate that because I've been trying to get her on for a month now. So, but I seem to have figured out the guest problem
Hmm.
because you're here.
Yep. We finally got all the bugs worked out as far as the Google Hangouts and all that stuff.
Except for XSplit.
Oh yeah, that I don't know anything about, so I can't help you there.
And Sammy's not here to learn me, so
Hmm.
yeah. But yeah, she's been playing around with it, and I feel stupid. She looks like she figured it all out in one night, and it took me.
Hmm.
I'm still figuring it out, but yeah,
Yeah, my computer would explode if I tried to download XSplit. It's on its last legs.
Hmm.
It's
yeah.
been through. It's seen some things.
But yeah, it's like, well, as I was saying before the show, I learned it on a learning curve of a week to put the tribute show for Deb together because I knew I had to have it. And it was something she was trying to teach me, but then shit happened. Then she died. Asshole. But,
Damn it,
but
Deb! Why do you have to go die on us?
yeah, and the thing is, nobody else I know uses XSplit.
Hmm.
And those that do don't use it with Hangouts.
Gotcha.
And now I guess the new thing is Discord.
Yeah. I don't really know
I'm
too much
like,
about that.
oh my god, I looked at it the other well, in the last couple, I'm like, nope, we're not going that direction. I was like, oh no. I have enough trouble figuring out Twitter. So, so Trish,
Yes.
I know we're speaking to the choir. I know
Mm-hmm.
pretty much everybody knows who the fuck you are. Who are
Mm-hmm.
you?
Oh, okay. Well, I am the former host of the podcast By Any Means and By Skeptical. Um, might start podcasting again sometime in the near future. I'm thinking about maybe like combining the two and to make a brand new show. But in the meantime, what I basically just been freelance writing and blogging about LGBTQ rights issues. Um, Writing about it for publications like Splice Today, Rewire. Was writing for Into magazine, but they shut down earlier this year. Kind of a shame because they're a high paying job too. But yeah, my latest project is The Daily Queer. It is an LGBTQ news blog on medium.com. The URL is medium.com/the-daily-queer.
Send that to me and I will put it in the show description later.
Sure, no
Yeah,
problem.
yeah.
Yeah.
Link people to your blog for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But even before, like, I got to, quote, know you via Facebook and whatnot, and I also actually met you at NanoCon.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
which conference it was. I only been to two. I mean, I had been following some of your writings. Now, I'm not like religious. Every time you publish, I read it that second. Now, sometimes I do,
Mm-hmm.
but I get to it eventually within a couple days. And I like the fact that you're coming from, the queer perspective, the LGBT perspective. And I find like I always approached it from the fighting the bullshit of religion
Mm-hmm.
aspect. And it's like I was telling Morgan before the show, I don't care if you're LGBTQ, whether you're, yellow, orange, green, purple, what religion you are, as long as you don't inject it into policy.
Exactly.
But I think you give a more personal focus on it. And one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is, three of your recent articles. Any specific one you want to start with?
Well, let's talk a little bit about last Monday when the Supreme Court announced it will review 3 cases involving LGBTQ workplace discrimination. I'll read a little bit here. This is a quote from Vox. The court agreed to hear 3 cases that have to do with whether existing federal bans on sex discrimination in the workplace also prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. In the consolidated Altitude Express Inc. versus Zarda and Bostock versus Clayton County, Georgia, a skydiving instructor and a child welfare services coordinator, respectively, said they were fired for being gay. And in RG and GR Harris Funeral Homes versus Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, a funeral home employee said she was fired because she came out as transgender. And so, yeah, basically, it's going to be about whether or not Title VII of Civil Rights Act protects LGBTQ employees from discrimination. I did see that the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission says yes. They've argued that yes, it does, but
for a while.
Right, yeah, but for others, it's a little bit trickier. So it depends on kind of like the individual, how they interpret it. So it'd be really interesting to find out, what happens there, especially since the SCOTUS is predominantly conservative-leaning judges. I don't know. I kind of lost track of what. Did anybody ask Kavanaugh during the initial hearing if what his thoughts on LGBTQ?
Oh,
rights?
he's against it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's totally against it. But I will say this as a caveat with both Kavanaugh and Roberts. They're not stupid.
Okay, gotcha.
In the sense that, if you look at Roberts' decision with the ACA, he basically kind of, sort of left his religious predilections to the side.
Oh, okay.
I think I haven't read a lot of Kavanaugh's work, but I think he's in the same vein. I think a lot of what we hear before they get placed on the Supreme Court is just puffing, but they're not.
For sure.
They're not going to leave the fact that they are judges, or former lawyers or whatever, to the side. If it goes against the rule of law, they're not going to rule for it. Now they might,
unless you're Clarence Thomas.
Well, yeah, Clarence Thomas is a caveat to everything.
And Alito, and
yeah,
I think those were the worst ones I can think of.
Alito
Thomas and Alito.
Yeah, I think with Roberts and Kavanaugh, while they might not agree with their own decisions, like on a personal level, I think they're smart enough to realize that they have to let the rule of law stand. And I think the problem with like the EEOC, the arguments I've heard, is that some are accusing the EEOC of redefining sex.
Oh, yep, I saw that too.
And
that's a big argument.
Yeah, and it's a tough one to pick apart because it's like.
Well, their reasoning is because let me make sure I'm saying this right. So, for example, for somebody who is in what you would say a same-sex relationship, so somebody who's a woman married to a woman, man married to a man, or what have you, the stance that the EEOC takes is that that's discrimination on the basis of sex, because say if you were a man who had a wife they wouldn't care that you had a picture of your spouse. But
Right.
if you are a woman with a wife, your employer then has a problem. So
Mm-hmm.
you're inherently discriminating based on sex. And then
Mm-hmm.
the way they've also came out in support of trans protections under Title VII, because essentially it's this gender nonconformity. Basically,
Right.
what they're saying you're not performing gender in the way that I want you to perform it, like that you are a trans woman. To me, is an employer might say to me, I don't think that's valid, but what you're doing is you're invalidating someone's gender
Mm-hmm.
or their sex. So that's the EEOC's basis, which is a sound argument. Actually, the American Bar Association has, we filed an amicus brief stating, well, I mean, I didn't work on it, but the American Bar Association filed an amicus brief saying that basically that they support the EEOC stance that you're inherently discriminating against people's sex when you are discriminating against LGBTQ people
Mm.
for either not conforming with their expectations of how someone's gender is, portrayed, or how they come to that gender, um, or who they're in relationships with.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it came at a time for me like to pick it apart, like at a really crappy time. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know the bar association though.
Yeah.
Chimed in. That's cool. Yeah, it's a tough one because like I mean I lost a job because they found out I was gay.
Mm.
Granted, it was back in the 80s. Not much I could do back then.
Mm.
And even back then, the argument was, I mean, it was the start of fighting or battling this based on the 14th Amendment, and now they've seemed to added in this idea, with what the EOC is doing. So they're progressing in how to battle these claims. But
Yeah, and an easy way would have been had they, because the argument is, of course, that, oh, well, if you wanted it to protect this is the original argument. Oh, if you wanted it to protect the LGBTQ people, then you would have put it in there. But the thing is, like, the argument still follows that you're discriminating on the basis of sex. I mean, it's a valid argument to make.
well, yeah, and I think the thing that gets me is a lot of people don't realize that this whole issue of homosexuality and being trans really, when a lot of these laws were initially, or statutes, however you want to put, were originally written, homosexuality was not in the news.
Mm-hmm. It's right.
So it's like, oh yeah, well, XYZ, they should have put LGBTQ in. Well, LGBTQ back in 1954 wasn't an issue. It didn't become an issue until 1955.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah, it really wasn't. I mean, and also the basis that people just, as it, LGBTQ people, as we started becoming more and more accepted, it's just like people, I think, kind of also assumed,
Mhm.
that Title VII covers. I mean, I know there are many people who think it does now, and the EEOC's position is that their interpretation trumps any state law.
Mhm.
As well. So in Mississippi, for example, we have a law on the books that it was challenged, but the Fifth Circuit said basically they threw it out on standing because they said nobody had been harmed yet.
Right.
So, which I mean, I think is kind of a nonsense way to go about it, because it's just like, okay, yeah, we'll wait until, what if it was somebody that was trying to go to see a doctor and they end up dying? It's like, really,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to wait until something like that happens before you act? Because the law is harmful on its face, and I think it is unconstitutional on its face. But it basically says that employers or anybody basically with a religious conscience can deny the religion, what was it, sincerely held belief,
Oh yes.
that gender identity is, you're born a man or you're born a woman, and that, the only valid relationships are married heterosexual relationships. Like, it even goes as far as to kind of just allow people to discriminate against people who have premarital sex, or
How are they going
you
to
know
judge that? I mean, how are they going to find
Well,
that out?
Yeah, that I mean, basically it's what you assume about people, and that's the thing that happens is you start having to then it's sort of this even more strict thing that comes out with as far as gender roles go, and
Mhm.
it's demanding an even stricter performance because then you're oh well, I don't want them to think I'm trans or gay or having premarital sex or anything. So you have to.
Well,
It's harmful in that way as well.
well, the thing with some of these laws as they're being written, people don't realize if you're divorced or a single mom or a single dad, or a person of color, you're included as well. If there's,
Mhm.
I mean, I may have the details wrong because this is going back a few years. There was an article, and I believe it was out of Mississippi, where um, a church barred a black couple just because they were black, and basically, I mean, it never went to court because it
You can't. Yeah,
you
you
can't.
can't
Yeah,
against the church. Yeah.
but the overall commentary around it was what they did is legal because that's their sincerely held belief.
But also, yeah, you can't sue a
Yeah,
church for exclusion of
yeah,
membership. But yeah, I mean, that is also another aspect thing that they're carving out here is the sincerely held belief. And you notice it goes from like sincerely held religious belief to sincerely held belief. So now
Mm.
it's that you don't even have to because I mean, I guess if somebody like me were like sincerely held religious belief, you're like, oh, well, you can't litigate somebody's, religion basically in court.
right.
But so therefore it's unconstitutional on its face. But or if you want to litigate that then and open the doors for that, then be my guest. But I'm going to litigate how sincerely held that religious belief of yours is.
Yeah,
I'm going to get into that nitty gritty and bring out your personal life. But because you're opening the doors to it. But yeah, it's hard, but yeah, it hasn't been struck down yet. But again, I haven't seen where I know that there are people who are ACLU of Mississippi, for instance, on basically standby for as soon as somebody trots out that law. You
Mm.
know,
well, that's the thing. I mean, how we can't litigate it because nobody's been harmed yet. And it's
Mm.
like you said. Well,
Yet.
I mean, I know in
and it's
Texas.
a threat. It's like, oh well, I don't want to be the first one that law is used against.
Mhm.
So it's
Right.
like people aren't feeling like it's safe to be themselves or to tell people, hey, yeah, I'm gay or I'm bisexual or I'm trans, and you can't be. Again, it harms people's ability to be able to come out.
Yeah. Well, I think too, like when I was rereading Tris's articles, I was like, God, these remind me of Martin Niemoller, the poem.
Oh, yeah, yeah. First it came for the
Yeah.
socialists.
It's like
Yeah, yeah.
they seem to now be focusing on primarily trans issues. Yeah, the
Yep.
whole gay thing and the lesbian thing is in the background.
Because of marriage equality, and then
Mhm. Right.
they're trying still to do things like restricting adoption and
Mhm.
things of that nature and saying, oh, well, you're not entitled to, even though Justice Kennedy, which, but,
Mhm.
but in his
Rabbit
opinion
hole.
said, in Obergefell that, you have the same marital rights basically as anybody else, and that should include, benefits. Like that is a very clear interpretation of that law, of that case. But, states are trying to, wiggle around it, which they, will do inevitably. But, yeah, it is. I mean, it's troubling. I don't know as far as the Supreme Court hearing this. I don't Yeah, I always get very nervous when I hear the Supreme Court is taking on a case like this anyway, because I'm just
Mhm.
like, either we're going to get a bad opinion or it's going to be one of those opinions that's like, I don't even know what this means. Or they just punt the football back to Congress, essentially, which is what I
Mm.
predict will be done. I think
Mm.
that if there is a conservative majority here, which, I mean, is what the court's makeup is, I think that at least one opinion or concurrence. Now, I don't know if there's going to be a majority opinion. There might be just a bunch of concurrences, but I think it's going to basically say, well, it should have been put in Title VII, and that's going to be the way they kind of punt it off to Congress.
Yeah. For reference, what is Title VII?
Okay, Title VII basically is, the law that says you can't be discriminated against for things like a promotion, being hired, or certain jobs based on your basis of marital status, religion, race, national origin, let's see, age, and sex. So, I might be missing one, but yeah, that's the basis of it. You can't discriminate against somebody, but you can't say, oh, well, I'm not hiring this person because they are um, originally from Mexico, or oh, I'm not going to promote this person because she's a woman, or something like that. Like you can't do that under Title VII. So that's basically what it is. It's Title VII of the Civil Rights Act.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's what confuses people. We get like Title VII, Title IX.
Yeah, Title IX,
all these titles and regulations. Like, why can't we just say you can't discriminate against somebody because of XYZ?
Well, there's different titles and different things apply to different aspects of it, and it's administrative law speak. So usually when you're referring to just a regular federal law, sometimes you'll just say, if you're citing to like a criminal law, you might say either the name of the act, like for instance, when people talk about the Americans with Disabilities Act, I mean that's not that's civil still, but you just say the ADA or Americans with Disabilities Act. You don't say the statutory shorthand, but sometimes you will. Sometimes you'll be like, Mississippi Code annotated 97-1-33, or you'll just say, oh, this is commercial burglary. But yeah, so when you deal with administrative law, you deal with it's a little bit different. That's when you start getting into titles, or you get into things like Section 404. You get a lot of administrative law speak. So that's where that comes from, is just that it's a more administrative law based.
Well, what makes me think of it, granted this is anti-vax shit, but it
Yeah.
kind of relates, is that a woman in one of the groups I was in was posting, oh my God, an article that came out in, I think it was January of this year, if you want to call it that, from a Cheryl Atkinson, who she's the one that years ago said the CIA broke into her computer and was deleting things as she typed, not realizing that she had her hand sitting on the delete button.
Oh,
she's a Fruit Loop, in my opinion.
She sounds familiar.
Yeah, well, she put out this new thing saying that a Dr. Zimmerman, who worked with, I want to say CDC, but I could be wrong, retracted or wanted to add to his testimony, and about.
I have heard of this, yeah.
Well, I dove into it. I'm still working on the piece, and it's going on a month now. How it's like, this woman was like, I don't know how to counter this. So I just happened along her post, and I'm like, here's an easy synopsis. It's bullshit, and explained all the background shit that Atkinson's left out. Like, this goes back to the 2007 kit, and this is what I think scares people, is they'll hear Title VII, for example, and they get scared away by all the legal mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
And when it really comes down to plain and simple, just don't fucking discriminate against people.
Yeah, and there is some complications with Title VII, that, it's, you have your burden of proof trying to establish that, because you also have to show intent, and that is very hard to do unless, and, that's when you start getting really into the legal stuff, and where you really need to be, I guess have a law degree or some kind of understanding of it. is, when you start meeting these sort of burdens of proof and different ways you can go about that, because it's rare that you have somebody anymore that says that, unless they have a document or an email that says, hi, yes, I fired this person because they were gay.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like,
They
it's
find
very hard.
loopholes.
Exactly, they find loopholes. It's kind of like, Batson hearings as another example where you can always find a loophole. That's where, you can't strike jurors for their race.
Hmm.
Happens all the time. You just have to come up with
Mm.
a pretext.
Well,
And you can come up with anything. So that's another thing you can do. That's when you look for, okay, well, because right now I'm actually working on an employment. I'm working on a Title VII case right now, and this one is for age and race, primarily age, but yeah, so you look at things like, okay, well, what was their performance at work like? Did they
Mm-hmm.
have any bad reports? And you start kind of narrowing it down and looking at, okay, well, have they fired anybody else that's, gay or anything like that? And you go through and you can kind of establish either a pattern there,
Mm-hmm.
or did they make any remarks? Or, you can look and see, okay, well, there's nothing wrong with their performance, then why did this happen? And it's clear that, you have no cause, your cause, must have been this. So you can you can kind of sort of build a circumstantial case around that. But before you can even do a Title VII action, you have to go through the EEOC, which is
right,
why they're involved, because
Mm.
you can't just go in. This happens with administrative law. You can't just go file a federal lawsuit. There's usually going to be steps you have to take. So if you're going to file a Title VII action against someone, you have to go to the EEOC first, and they do an investigation, and they will either say, yes, we found, that you were discriminated against under Title VII. This is our findings, and basically you can then sort of proceed with
Mm.
with a federal lawsuit, right? To ascertain your damages and that kind of thing. And usually by that point they'll want to settle. But then when you get to but sometimes they'll issue something that says, we didn't find either way, or we didn't find anything really that made us comfortable to say, yes, this is a Title VII violation, but they can say, yes, you can go ahead and sue. Or they'll say
Mm.
straight up, you have no case. You
Mm.
cannot sue. So yeah, they'll make one of those three determinations. One of the more common ones, of course, is, they don't want to say either way.
Mm.
right.
So that, yeah, we'll leave it to whatever a jury finds. If you find additional evidence, because there's more things you could subpoena, you can do depositions of people, things of that nature, a little bit more than what, the EEOC is really kind of able to do. But yeah, so it has to go through that process first. But if there's basically no evidence, then yeah, it gets thrown out. But I mean, you can also, I've seen, take anything to trial where you're like, oh no, there's no way this is going to go to trial,
Mm.
and lo and behold, it does. But
Well, the thing I find interesting is like in some of my conversations in the past, people are like,
mhm.
"Oh, nobody's ever been fired for being gay or a lesbian." I'm like, "I have,"
Mm.
and they're like, "Well, why didn't you sue?" Well, back in the day when it happened, back in like '88, it was around 1988. I'm like, because there's nothing I could do back then.
Yeah, the EEOC
A-
interpretation didn't support it, but they've
and then
changed
they're
their
like,
mind.
well, why couldn't you sue on the federal level? And I'm like, because there's no federal law saying you can't.
Right. Exactly.
It's like these people have no, some of these people have no concept that, where we've been and where we're going to
Hmm.
and why this is an issue. I mean, it's like we don't have, I mean, people just assume we have protections we don't have. Like I live
Mm.
in a right to work state, okay? And this was the case
Same.
when I lived in New York as well. I mean, the laws didn't change until mid 2000s. And it's like there was nothing I could do.
Oh, I'm still in a right to work state,
Yeah,
and
Mm.
and it's like and now I'm in a right to work state. Not that this is even an issue where I work now, but when I worked for a big box gas station, I actually had a customer tell me that I had no right to a job because of my sexuality. And they even went so far as to uh, file a, I'll say complaint for a lack of better word. Basically,
Yeah, with the company.
yeah, they called the company and the company called my boss. And my boss was like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. She's fine. Basically, that's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Basically, this person was just being an asshole, you know?
Mhm.
But when I was telling this person in the quote debate I was in, and he was like, "Well, that's wrong." I'm like, "Exactly. The problem
Mm-hmm.
is, though, to prove that it's wrong." And this is something that kind of caught my eye when from your article, Tris, was that you go, the National Center for Transgender Equality released a statement explaining the new HHS policy. Right now, everything is still up in the air. It can take months or even years to rewrite or undo a regulation. They say, and quote, and the Trump administration would need to first put out a draft regulation and give members
Yes.
of the public enough time to comment on it. However, if the new policy does go into place, Health and Human Services,
There we go. Rolls off the tongue better.
yeah, that comes out a little better, will not investigate complaints of anti-transgender discrimination for the time being. And then you go on, and the point is, unless you got a boatload of dough, you're fucked.
Mm.
Because well, I'm going to use you as an example, Trish, because I do know some of your situation. If you had to, let's say you were working, you got fired because you're you're
Mm-hmm.
gender or how do you term yourself? Binary?
Non-binary.
Not binary. Okay, got to get the terms right. Um, there, unless you have money, you can't do a damn fucking thing about it.
No.
It falls on you to prove that you were discriminated against. And unless you get the ear of the ACLU or Lambda Legal or any of the advocacy groups that do these cases, you got to have money. So you
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
have
or with me, so what we're doing for this employment discrimination case, we're doing it on contingency, which means if you
uh,
win, you get a certain percentage. But the thing is, unless you have a case that is likely to win, no
you're
one's going
not
to
going
want to take that because it costs money to file
Mm.
these,
to, yeah,
especially a
Yep.
federal lawsuit. It costs so much money to do that. And you're literally putting yourself in a hole to do somebody's federal lawsuit that may not even see the light of day,
exactly.
essentially. So,
And people
yeah.
don't realize it's not just as simple as going down to small claims court.
No, you
You
got to file
know,
federally.
when you pay your $60 and you go to court, I mean, it's a wild parallel, but it's like it's not that simple. I mean,
Yeah.
cases that you know that affect the LGBTQ community comes down to money. So a lot of people who are, I'm sorry, I have the itchies really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, might turn my camera off. Um, I forgot my point. Oh, a lot of people that might want to file a case and actually have a case don't because they don't have the money. So there's no real way to individually battle this. You either have to, uh, get in like, this case is like three cases
Hmm.
into one. I just find that so asinine. I mean, I know why, but it's a shame that we as the LGBT community, we have to you know stoop to a level to be able to fight for our rights, and that's why it makes me think of the Martin Niemoller poem, because
Mm-hmm.
like they pulled this shit with the gays and lesbians for marriage equality. The same shit was used with abortion.
Mm-hmm.
It's just their, I mean, and this is actually their strategy. They're actually pulling things from the abortion argument. to battle the LGBT issue. And it's like, we went through this 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 25. It's like, it just keeps looping.
Mm.
And then you get people that are so extreme and some, I mean, what was it? Texas that if you, I mean, it's not LGBT, but oh, if you have an abortion, we're going to execute you now.
Yeah, what was that all about?
I don't
Yeah,
know.
so this guy who he looks like a thumb, um, like genuinely, I looked at him and I was like, I've never seen anybody that looked like a thumb as much as he does. But he does. Oh, also he's been married like 5 times or something crazy. And I learned this recently. In the state of Louisiana, I think you have 6. And then the state of
Really?
Louisiana is like, no. But I don't think anybody challenged it because I don't know anybody that's been trying to get married 7 times. I think you
Mm.
just give up at that point. But I think it's just not for you. So yeah, it's just craziness. But yeah, he said he's gonna, do, and this is kind of the implied thing because I don't know if y'all remember, but when they were having basically the presidential debate in the town halls for 2016, when Trump was asked basically, okay, well, you say you're pro life or pro forced birth, whatever, and he says yes, and then they ask, okay, well, who's going to be punished? And usually, it's always been said, oh, well, the doctors, whatever, whatever. But then he says, oh, well, something has to happen to the woman. And all these
Mm.
conservatives were like, oh no, he said the quiet part out loud.
Right, he said that out
We're
loud.
supposed to like not act like we're going to, do this. But then this, they again, it's emboldening because now this guy can be like, yeah, I want you to be executed
Mm.
for exercising your basic bodily autonomy. Like that is what they want. That's what they've always wanted. But to anybody who doesn't fall in line, just they get rid of you or punish you in some kind of other fucked way. But yeah, and it just goes to show it's not about being pro-life, because if you're pro-life, of course you wouldn't support the death penalty. But that
Right.
doesn't.
There's a person in the chat room named the Black Petunia who goes, "Heh, family values, LOL."
Yeah, exactly. It's you can get married all you want to and cheat on your wife and have
Well,
all kinds of
that
crazy nonsense, but don't you dare have bodily autonomy.
well
Right.
that's what's so crazy about some of the arguments that I have seen put forth. Whether it's the abortion issue, whether it's LGBT issues, even I've seen it even in mental health, dealing with mental health issues. It's like the whole going along what our chatter. I don't have chat window open because my computer decided to be weird today. Um, it's like, yeah, you speak family values, but you want to fucking murder everybody. Yeah, it's funny. On a side note, because something that Morgan said made me remember I had this article. This goes back to our talk with Catherine Dawson about
Hmm.
the abortion issue, and it was brought up about abortion regret and how it's becoming the favorite anti-choice talking point. So Rewire
Yeah, yeah.
put out an article. I haven't read the whole article. I'll throw it in the show notes or the show description. So I haven't read it, so I don't know what point of view they're coming from, but it sounded interesting. It's actually a fairly long article too. Um, so just a reminder that yeah, that's still in the news, but I'll try to remember to put that in the notes. I just remembered that when you said that about abortion. But
Yeah.
I I think what it comes down to, like especially with I want that window open, please. Thank you. It, at the end, like when you concluded your article, you said, once again, Trump shows that he is no friend of the LGBT community. He's
Oh yeah, the Health
more
and
than
Human
happy
Services.
to protect us from radical Islamic terrorists.
Yep,
But when
that's
it
what he
comes
said.
to Christian fundamentalists, we are on our own. Uh,
Exactly. In fact, let's switch over to what we were talking about here with the Health and Human Services Department. We mentioned it earlier. Apparently, yeah, last week, word got out that the Health and Human Services planned on a new policy that would give license to healthcare providers to deny services to trans people based on religion. Here's a little excerpt from the Washington Post. Quote, the debate centers on the word sex as it applies on those provisions. Once again, going back to that, some faith-based healthcare organizations protested in 2016 when President Barack Obama's Health and Human Services Department interpreted the term to include gender identity and transgender people as protected classes. They worried they could be forced to provide surgery, medications, or other care to help transgender people transition to the opposite sex, and several groups filed suit arguing it violated their religious freedoms. So basically, the first do no harm doesn't apply to us trans and gender non-conforming folk for some strange reason. I don't know where they teach that in medical school, but apparently that's one of the courses they have to take.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and that's crazy because it is an oath that you have to take is to do no harm. And by refusing to treat someone based on that, you're not supposed to also like just refuse to treat someone who is in, critical condition. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can get there's federal laws about that you have to stabilize the person. It's to discourage people from just basically dumping people off at the hospital and then the medical staff just trying to find somewhere to put them because they don't want to deal with them because they don't
Mm.
know if they can pay or not. So you are obligated to at least stabilize, and then you can get them to a different hospital if they need to be there, or if you're incapable of taking care of them for some reason, like you don't have the equipment, you don't have the doctors, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, so you run into these kinds of issues, but then yeah, you do take an oath that's do no harm. And it's the same way for, like, going back to sort of in a way the death penalty. The reason they don't have doctors or nurses attending or administering the drugs is because of that Hippocratic oath, do no
Mm.
harm. They are not permitted to. So it boggles my mind that they would be permitted to act in discriminatory ways towards people.
well, well, yeah, you said it right there. Boggles your mind. It's like it's basically generally accepted that those that are transgender, and Tris, please correct me if I'm wrong,
Mm-hmm.
that the suicide rate is higher because
Yep.
they cannot have the surgery for
Oh, there's a
whether
lot of reasons.
I mean, and it's like, okay, so you're basically, I mean, I have a friend here in town who just legally changed his name. I gotta throw that, make sure I'm using the right pronouns now
Mm-hmm.
because, but he actually said to me maybe a year or two ago that if this doesn't come to fruition, his transitioning, he goes, I'll probably off myself because nobody
Mm.
accepts me.
Mm.
Now,
Sad.
there's other issues involved, of course, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's really sad when a 22-year-old tells me that.
Mm-hmm.
Because just because, and I, I live in central PA, north central, kind of hickish, but not. But we're,
Pennsylvania,
yeah, Pennsylvania is,
as Deb used to say.
that's why I always use that term because really
Mm-hmm.
it's, I mean, I know some really great people that are very accepting of everything. They don't give a shit. You're a person, and that's how they look at you. But then we also are a Republican stronghold. I won't say a Reich stronghold, but generally conservative, and they're just terrible. I mean, and I know a lot of kids that are questioning or they've decided their sexuality and they have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And it's like when they think suicide is an option, that's
Mm.
really scary. And then to have a doctor say, well, my religious belief
Mm,
thinks you're a fucking asshole, so we're not going to help you.
yeah.
Yeah, like my religion tells me that I don't have to
Mm
apply the Hippocratic oath to you. Essentially, you're not a person,
hmm. Mm hmm.
is what that
Hold
boils
me
down to.
nice.
And it's this whole and I think that is the excuse for like, okay, well, it's different, but then, say my death penalty example, because this has to do with religious belief. And I'm like, there's plenty of people who use religious belief as justification for the death penalty.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That does not mean that a doctor is allowed to come bust up in the execution chamber and say, let me pump them full of the drugs
Mm.
because, I'm religious and I believe an eye for an eye.
Yeah.
They don't let you do that. So I don't, again, I don't see how you would be able to perpetuate this harm. And again, it's like no one made you be a doctor.
Right. Well,
No one forces you to go to medical school.
right.
And
If
plus,
you can't take
also,
that oath, yeah. Go
right,
ahead.
and plus, also, I think you need special train. Don't you need like special training in order to perform what you call it, bottom surgery, too. So it's not like the way I see it. If you're against that stuff, then don't train to do bottom surgery.
Well, I know
Yeah.
when I first moved to where I live now, which will be 20 years in August ish. And when I first moved here, one of the rumors that were going around is that I moved to where I'm at, okay, middle of nowhere, 3 hours from Pittsburgh, 5 hours from Philly, literally in middle of the state, to have a sex change surgery at the clinic.
What?
And I'm like, at the time, 20 years ago, there were only 3, maybe 4 places in the entire country that even did top surgery at the time.
Mm.
I mean, other than, mastectomy for medical reasons like cancer. So it's like, yeah, I moved to this little hick town in the middle of PA to have a sex change surgery, which, no, not quite. Not like I would, well, there might be one doctor that would have done it, but she's not a surgeon. It's like people don't realize, like you said, you know, the doctors that do the top or bottom surgeries are
Hmm.
specialists.
Right, exactly.
They have, I
Yeah,
mean,
you can't just walk into an ER and be like, "Give me this surgery." They'll be like, I would rather you go to a specialist because,
Hmm.
obviously you're dealing with different kinds of surgeries.
Right,
I would rather
exactly.
go to a specialist about something.
yeah, it's
Hmm.
like
You
cut
know, it,
off.
yeah, like that would be, yeah. If I was like, hey, I would like, if I mean that's with me with like any kind of procedure or any type of, part of the body. I mean, yeah, you can go to a general practitioner for general stuff and do get
Hmm.
referrals, like,
Mhm.
because we're like, hey, I know this, this person that does, these kinds of surgeries. I'll set up an appointment with them. And it's like, okay, great. But yeah, like you can't just walk into a hospital anywhere in the world and just be like, "Give me this kind of surgery for anything."
Yeah,
Like you can't just walk in like, I'm sorry, who are you? Do you have an appointment?" Like I
Hmm.
have other patients, like,
yeah.
and
Well,
also we don't do that here. Like I didn't train specifically for that. I operate on people's lungs. What is wrong
Hmm.
with you?
well,
I'm a foot doctor. Don't go to me with open heart surgery.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
I think though, in some of my conversations, I mean, that is the mentality some individuals have, is that you can just literally walk into any doctor and say you want your tits cut off. It's like, hell no, that's not quite how it works. I mean, I know a oncologist surgical oncologist whose specialty that he's been doing for 20 years at least is reconstructive surgery or cancer surgery, relating, breast cancer primarily, and he specializes in reconstruction. 20 years he's been doing this. He didn't
Hmm.
learn it overnight, and
Right.
he even said the other day, he goes, "Yeah, I just learned a new technique for hopefully to minimize scarring." I mean,
Yeah, you're still learning even as a
Mhm.
specialist.
Right.
All things every day. Yeah.
I have this odd thing about watching Dr. Zip Popper on YouTube. And
Mhm.
even
Oh.
she, okay, I don't know if you guys, she deals with, well, zits, but also small abscesses and cysts and stuff that have a tendency to grow on people. And even she says, she was saying in the one video, which I don't remember how old this video is because I'm like woefully behind. And she's like, yeah, I learned, even she said, I learned this new technique to, and it was like tucking make a nice little incision and then when closing up so it wouldn't leave a scar. And she's been doing it, I don't know how many years, but she's still learning. It's like, no, you don't just walk into a hospital and say you want your tits cut off. That
But
doesn't.
Mm.
also, it's kind of insidious in the fact that they're like, oh, well, I think any doctor should be able to refuse you because if you're like, even if you're trans or LGBTQ, like, believe it or not, we're not immune to like all of the things. So, like,
Mhm.
at some
Right.
point, we do have to go see like regular doctors. Like, sometimes you do
Yep.
have to go to the ER because you fell down the stairs and you're a clumsy fool like me. Like, it's and people would literally say, oh, well, yeah, if you go to the ER, a doctor should be allowed to not, treat your ankle because you're bi. And it's just like, what does that have to do with my ankle whatsoever, first of all?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, and it's again like, and also, I don't see any doctors that are advocating for this kind of restriction or allowance to discriminate. Like, I am not, even in my region, I'm not seeing any doctors who are like, yeah, I want it to where I don't have to treat gay people.
Mm.
There is one, I believe, out of Texas,
Mm.
but I think it's more he's doing it for points.
And
Mm.
publicity and to go on Sean Hannity.
Yeah, but that's just the general gist that I get because things.
Mm.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Well,
have
I don't see any doctors that are like
yeah.
going protesting in mass, being like, oh, I want to be able to not treat people. And yeah, it's crazy.
Well, it's like when I had my stroke when I first went to the doctor. As soon as they found out I had no insurance, I mean, kind of related, kind of not. I was gone. 2.5 hours.
Mm.
I was in the hospital. My second stroke, 6 months later, I had insurance. Guess what? They kept me.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
Again, you're only required to stabilize.
they didn't even do that.
Oh, well,
Mm.
My
that's
my
an
blood
MTAL
per
violation.
yeah, my blood pressure when I went in was 205 over 185. My blood pressure when I left was 189 over 165. They called
Yeah.
that, yeah. Oh, follow up with your primary care doctor. I didn't have one at the time because she moved.
Yeah.
I'm like, so even though yes, I am part of the LGD I can't talk today. Part of the community. I mean, just based on that, I mean, something that serious. I mean, well, who was it today? Pendleton had a stroke and died.
Hmm.
You know, Luke Perry,
Mhm.
3 years younger than I, and I'm finding out more and more people younger than I. So
Yeah. I've known people in their
I
20s.
yeah, it's like so for me, just I don't broadcast that I'm gay. Okay, it's kind of obvious, but it's not something I broadcast. Obviously, they have it in my records at the hospital, but it's like so for it's got to be 10 times worse. And I don't think my sexuality had anything to do with it, but to tell that to a trans person that oh no
Mm.
we can't now they're which state I can't remember which state one of the southern ones they want to
Of
make
course.
it well it might be Missouri but I think
Oh,
it is
they ain't
Missouri.
Southern.
Yeah so but they want to make it that if you receive Medicaid and you're trans Medicaid won't they want to make it so Medicaid can't pay for your transition surgery.
Yeah, which
Yes.
brings us
Hang on
to
a sec.
another one of Chris's articles,
Oh, I didn't
actually.
even read
Iowa. Iowa.
Oh,
Yeah, look at
Iowa, okay.
That's it.
I
that's a
know
good
it's one of
segue.
those bizarre states.
Mhm.
Although Iowa's kind of pretty.
Yeah, I have a friend who lives up there, so yeah, it is quite bizarre.
Okay, go for it, Tris.
Yeah. Let's see here. This was from a couple days. I think it's like from a couple days ago. I forgot when
Yeah.
exactly it was. I think it was like Saturday. I found this story that apparently, the Iowa House, let's see here, they passed legislation that would prohibit using public insurance money, including Medicaid, to pay for transgender surgery, and that the restrictions would go into effect immediately if they're enacted. As far as I know, it's pretty much in the hands of the governor, Kim Reynolds, who is a Republican. So, yeah, it's probably going to happen. Now, according to the article I read in the Des Moines Register, the ruling was basically a fuck you to an Iowa Supreme Court decision back in
Yes.
March. Right, yeah, that would allow Medicaid to cover gender confirmation surgery. And apparently, the third, I think it was Iowa's Human Services Department. Apparently they classified gender confirmation surgery as cosmetic, like plastic surgery and stuff like
Okay,
that.
that leads into a question I have.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm going to stick my foot in my mouth, and I don't mean it this way, but are there transgender individuals that do not have gender dysphoria per se, to the point that it causes major issues where they really should have the surgery to correct it?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. In fact, I mentioned that in the article because one of the Republican senators, Mark Costello, he said on the floor this past Friday that that the surgery isn't always medically necessary, which it's true. Like for me, for example, I have no need to have bottom surgery. I'm fine with what I got. But what about the ones that do? I mean, where the hell are they gonna cough up all
Right.
the money? Because I mean, look, Callie,
Risk.
Marissa, Celeste, and there's probably a bunch of others I can't even remember. Stephanie Gatormson, they basically all had GoFundMe's for their surgeries, because I think without surgery, I think I read somewhere it can cost up to $15,000, so
Yeah,
like
if you don't have insurance, yeah.
right, exactly. So um basically, so like if we take that argument, like, okay, because since surgery isn't not all trans people want surgery, therefore when Medicaid isn't going to pay for anybody's surgery, it's like what the hell, I mean, it's not like yeah, I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling on for a second, but
Oh no,
still,
no, man.
Oh, you're fine.
but yeah, what about the people that do need surgery? Where are they going to cough up all the money?
Well, that's the thing, and what people don't realize is that, okay, if insurance pays for your surgery, case in point, I need ankle surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have this little tiny ligament or tendon that keeps tearing that's causing a lot of my issues pain wise. But okay, surgery would be covered by Medicaid. So I might have a $200 copay, which for me is a big deal. But I can't miss the week of work.
Right, yeah.
It's not just the surgery, but there
Mm-hmm.
has to
Exactly.
be, aftercare as far as whether you have to go through therapy, yada, 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 being off of work. Um, they don't consider that, but it goes back to where, the statistics show, at least from my understanding, is that those that have the gender dysphoria, am I saying that right? Yeah. Are at a higher likelihood to kill themselves.
That too, yep.
And also what's crazy is Medicare covers like Medicaid. Yes, Medicare covers hormone replacement therapy, and I think there might be some kind of thing where you have to have I think there are requirements, like you have to have been on hormones for a year in order to have
Right.
gender reassignment, which other places or other doctors I think have those guidelines as well. But that is a requirement for Medicare to pay for it. But Medicaid, it does vary state by state.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is this issue of, okay, so Medicare covers it, then, again, it's that difference between that and Medicaid. And I think it's probably because more people are on Medicaid and
Mm-hmm.
more older people are on Medicare. So,
Right.
people are more hesitant to take it
Well,
because,
I think too,
yeah,
Medicare is a federal program, which Medicaid is, but
but it's state.
it's
Mm-hmm.
state.
Yeah, that's why we haven't expanded. Mississippi will not expand Medicaid, even though the governor of Louisiana has said over and over, like, yeah, unlike y'all, we don't have rural hospital closures. Funny how that
Mm.
works.
Yeah.
But when you expand Medicaid, that tends to
Well,
stop the rural hospitals from closing.
even with the expansion, and that's a whole nother issue with the hospitals closing, but it's implemented by the state. That was the word I was looking for.
Yeah,
So the federal government gives the state a grant of X amount of dollars, and then the state itself determines how it's they spread the funds out. Same thing with food stamps. It's a federal program, but they give the state X amount of dollars, and it's up to the states within federal guidelines, obviously, to
yeah.
determine how to disperse those funds. So I can see why the disparity between the two, even
But
though
again, I feel like there should be federal guidelines that say that you can't
yeah,
say, oh, you can't have this because you're trans, because
Right.
there's all kinds of surgeries that Medicare or Medicaid, might determine, like, yes, this would be more medically necessary, and the same surgery situation doesn't fit all. Like, there's all kinds of
Mm-hmm.
things, there's all kinds of conditions. I mean,
right.
I'm saying that it's a condition, but there's all kinds of healthcare issues where, yes, you might need surgery. Yes, sometimes some issues require less invasive treatment. Other times, you can make the choice whether you want surgery or something less invasive. It's up to the individual to a certain point, and also it's up to the situation. And I think that that just say that, oh, well, not all trans people want the surgery, so therefore nobody gets a surgery. Like, that's a
Right.
gross,
Well,
broad
I
stroke
think
of,
too.
like, what different people's needs are.
I think too. One of the points, if I remember correctly, brought out in the article I read, excuse me, um, is that those that are saying no surgery, medication cover it, are
Mm-hmm.
relying on statistics that are like 20, 25, 30 years old, where current thought supported by data, I don't want to say fact, but the current consensus is that without those that suffer from gender dysphoria to the point that, you know, sex reassignment surgery is an absolute necessity so they don't kill themselves,
Mm-hmm.
they're ignoring all those statistics.
Mm.
Or
And
even just to be healthier. Like, it doesn't even have
yeah,
to be a dire situation. Like, people get surgeries all the time just to be healthier and able to live their lives easier. Like, like you can say certain back surgeries, like, they're not necessary, but they, make your life a hell of a lot easier. So,
Mm-hmm.
right.
yeah, it's these kinds of things. And I find it also, and we talk all about, founding fathers and all this nonsense, whatever. And one of those basic tenets is the separation of powers.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
Yet whenever the court decides something that they don't like, the first thing they do is they try and legislate their way out of it. But then what I don't see how this law can stand with the Supreme Court decision that Iowa made, because basically this legislation is like, it is cosmetic.
Mm-hmm.
But the court previously said, no, it is not. We're
Right.
basing this on necessity, and different people need different things, essentially, what I said. And I think there was a dissent, but um still, like, and then the legislature is just basically, they're saying, we say it's this.
Right.
well,
Exactly.
You
I think
can't do that.
part of the problem with the whole separation of power is that our current administration, specifically
Mm-hmm.
single man, he is trying to abolish,
Oh yeah.
literally, that separation of powers because just because he's
Mm-hmm.
well, I don't know.
Well, it makes the consolidation of power
Yeah,
easier.
he is point. Well, it's been assumed. Let me say that he basically wants to become king,
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
and basically he feels that all powers of government should rest with him, and he should have the final say. And
And all
that's what
the judiciary should agree with him no matter what,
and
and
that's why
the
he's
Senate
putting
should agree with him no matter what, and the House
exactly.
elections were obviously rigged because he no longer has a House, but that's the
Mm-hmm.
only, and we only have half of one branch of government, so
Yeah. And that's
yeah.
the thing. I mean, everything he's done has been to that end. And that's what the quote Republicans want, because with that, they can do whatever the hell they fucking want because Trump's going to
And it
support.
doesn't matter what the majority wants anymore because they
Mm-hmm.
do recognize that's what all this voter suppression and everything like that is about, because they're recognizing that, hey, you can't keep LGBTQ people in the closet anymore. People are going to come out and they're going to demand, we're going to demand our rights.
Right.
And more and more people are being supportive of that. Population's getting more diverse. We're
Mm-hmm.
open to newer ideas and things like that. But the thing is, they're like, if we can consolidate as much power right now and crush them under our heels now and nip it in the bud, essentially, then it's fine. We
Yeah.
don't have to lose our power
Yeah.
because they recognize that they're in danger of losing it, but they are trying right now to make sure they can consolidate it so that does not happen.
Yeah.
And that's what
Mm-hmm.
all this LGBTQ litigation is about now, because they know in the future voters, and more LGBTQ people are going to stand up for their rights and, be able to come out and also be able to build coalitions and ally support and that kind of thing. And they, again, yeah, this is their way of trying to snuff that out before it can even really start to have an impact.
Well, and go along with that, if they're able to do that with the LGBTQ community, they're going to be
On to the
able
next
to
one.
do that with the atheist community. They're going
Mm.
to be able to do that with women. They're going to be
Yep.
able to do that with people of color. They're going to be able to do that with immigrants, whether legal or illegal or however you
Mm-hmm.
term it. I've heard so many terms that it makes my head spin. Undocumented. I kind of like that one. But
Mm-hmm.
if they can do it to LGBTQ, they're going to do it to all of us.
Yeah,
Whether I mean, and that's what I mean.
it's a
That
test run.
yeah, it's a test run, and it just seems to be that it's really stuck with the LGBTQ community, and that's where we have that overlap. And this is where I struggle personally because I'm not one to, uh, as much as I hate using the word, I'm not a social justice warrior, but I can see the crossover.
Mm.
And that's why I do try to pay attention. Sometimes I cringe, but that's just me. That's my personal opinion. So yeah, I mean, anything that's happening now is going to happen to us in another. If we're atheists or secular,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to happen to us eventually because eventually that's what I mean. That's what the Reich wants. They want to crush everybody under their heel.
Mm, oh yeah. In fact, I just remembered. At last year's Creating Change conference, it was in DC last year. Yeah, Nick Fish from CFI and Sarah Levin of Secular Coalition. They did a workshop about the religious freedom bills and whatnot, and I remember like we went over this one bill and how it was worded, and I think it said something along. This talks about deeply held religious belief, and one of them was like it doesn't even have to be official church doctrine or something like
Exactly.
that, right? And all this, and at the time, the guys at Scathing Atheists were reviewing the Book of Mormon, and how having black skin is a curse. And so I thought, well, shoot, the way this is worded, a racist Mormon could turn away black people because saying, "Oh, they're the children of Ham," or I forgot which one it was, but
Ham.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing with this whole. Generally, the courts, and Morgan, correct me if I'm wrong, will not litigate or adjudicate religious doctrine.
Yes, they don't want to. And actually, we had a case that went to trial where I cannot believe I highly suspect that what happened was the guy suing our client. Our client was a Muslim woman.
Mm-hmm.
The guy suing our client, I think that he just let his client draft the complaint and just kind of signed off on it or whatever his pleading was. And basically, I could not believe an attorney signed off on this or an attorney wrote this, and cannot even believe that they were not sanctioned, but they weren't. But it basically said, and this is public record, that they said that our client could not testify under oath because she was a Muslim, and it's okay for Muslims to lie to non-Muslims, and that so therefore everything she said was a lie. Yeah,
Huh?
that was a court document that an attorney filed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that they are. I mean, it knows no ends.
Yeah. Well,
The amount of bigotry they want.
That's the problem.
And forth.
Like within the anti-vax community, a lot of people are trying to get religious exemptions in the states that allow them. And the problem is, if you look at church doctrine, there are none.
Yeah, and they don't want to get into it. They don't want to get
And
into the relevance of somebody's religious beliefs because it opens up a can of worms where you're then saying, okay, well, can I say that, and there are these issues of as far as, liability dealing with, Jehovah's Witnesses, like, okay, well, can you say that it's reasonable to, refuse a blood transfusion, and you could have mitigated your damages that way, and different courts handle it, differently. But and that's still, kind of a debate within the legal community. But as far as it goes, as litigating someone's actual religion, and if it's a religious belief they actually adhere to or whatnot, yeah, the courts don't want to get into it, and for good reason. Because
yeah,
it distracts from the main issues of what you're there for. It's a distraction, and it causes jurors to be kind of prejudiced in one way or another, and yeah, you just get into a whole thing there, and then you get into some First Amendment infringements. So yeah, the courts don't want to do that.
yeah, and that's why some people, some commenters that I've read are saying that they use the term personal instead of
And also, it allows non-religious people to then claim these kinds of things, because then you can say, okay, well, what is your religious basis? But if they're not really a churchgoer, or they're not religious, or even if they're an atheist, they can then say, oh, it's just a held belief of mine.
philosophical.
Yeah, it's philosophical. And that broadens it even more. So now you don't just have religion to deal with, you just have, oh, well, I think this is the way it is.
Yeah.
Again, going into the anti-vaxxer thing, it's just like, you don't even have to have a religious belief. You can just say, oh, well, I think this is true, so it's fine.
Yeah. And I kind of agree, like, with what you said. The courts don't want to, because then it distracts from the main point of whatever the argument is. And I think, leaving, but allowing on the other hand, allowing people of whatever religion, and I have seen some atheists on this side as well, who, they're siding with them. Oh yeah, you can discriminate because you're an atheist or you're XYZ religion. So they don't want to argue it, but they're allowing it. It's like, make up my mind.
Well, yeah, because it's like you don't want to even go there, so you're just like, okay, fine. Because again, it's like, I think everybody is so afraid of, this whole like, oh, I don't want to infringe on these certain religious beliefs. I mean, only of course certain ones, but but yeah, and because there's this whole persecution narrative, and you don't want to be the person that's, Sean Hannity's ranting about. So Yeah, I think there's some of that going on to a degree where you just kind of get bullied into just accepting it.
Yeah.
And it's gone on so long that you just kind of, by the time you realize it's a problem, you're just like, oh, how the hell did we get
Yeah.
here?
It's just, it's mind boggling. And the crossovers like between anti-vax and whatnot are, it's just, they steal from each other. They're
Mm.
Oh, they do, for sure.
it's like,
Oh yeah,
but
I can imagine.
speaking of accepting someone because they're something, Pete, go ahead, Morgan, say his last name. Pete Buttigieg.
Oh, Buttigieg.
Yeah, I wasn't even gonna try that one, folks. You did an article about Pete.
Yep.
My personal philosophy, I mean, for me, there's like 2, 3, 4 issues that are big for me. Education, where do they stand?
Mm-hmm.
Science, where do they stand? And universal health care, where do they stand? Now, the problem with I can't say his last name, with Pete
Mm-hmm.
is that
Mayor Pete.
yeah,
Yeah.
Mayor
Let's go
Pete,
with Mayor
okay.
Pete.
Yeah, that'll work. I won't be tripping over my
Mm-hmm.
pronunciation. With Mayor Pete is he is basically, from what I can tell and from what I've seen others, post articles concerning or comment on, is that he has no policy. Or he has not put forth a policy. I shouldn't say he has.
Right. Yeah. I think
And
Warren is the only one that's really like said, "Here's what I'm gonna do," rather than just simply say, "We need to do this, that, and the other." Like Warren's the only one that says, "This is what we're gonna do."
yeah. Now
Yeah,
I like
Elizabeth Warren has like 300 policies on her website. Like, if there is a
Right.
problem you have, she has a policy for it.
Mm-hmm.
the thing is,
But
like,
yeah, so what are your. Oh,
with
God.
Mayor Pete, I'm not gonna just vote for him because he's LGBTQ. As I
Right.
stated, I don't care what color, what race, what denomination, what religion, even what party, because I generally do not vote straight party ticket. Although I have recently, like since 2000 ish, but generally I do cross, over between Democrat and Republican. It's whoever has the best policy. Tell us about Pete.
Oh, okay, yeah. So yeah, like all the LGBTQ news sites have really been focusing on his campaign because, well, let's face it, if he becomes president, he'll be the first openly gay president we have, and that's really going to, he's really done a lot for LGBTQ representation, and I was going through stuff written about him, and some people are saying that if Buttigieg is like the LGBTQ community's Obama moment, and some comparisons between the two because Buttigieg, he definitely doesn't shy away from the fact that he's gay and he has a husband, but he also doesn't center his identity in his message. He tries to make it as universal as possible, just like Obama did. Like Obama, of course, never shied away from himself being black, but never centered it on his platform. And so yeah, there's a lot of there's a you have to excuse me, it's getting late. Let me get a drink of water first. Yeah, a lot of buzz about him. However, from an intersectional point of view, I still wonder if he'll end up getting the vote or whether he is the best candidate, because there are a couple of things in his track record that give me pause. For example, there's a whole thing about Daryl Boykins. I don't know if any of you all are familiar with him. He was South Bend, Indiana's first black police chief, and
Yes.
right, yeah, and and Boykins got fired after he supposedly secretly recorded his white colleagues saying racist shit, and Boykins got fired, but but his colleagues, nothing happened to them, and of course, a couple years later, Mayor Pete said, those infamous three words, "All lives matter." I mean, he since apologized for it, though, but you gotta wonder too, like, okay, well, will he be able to reach out to LGBTQ people of color, or people in color in general? And then there's the whole thing about his comments about Chelsea Manning, like Buttigieg, didn't agree with Obama's decision to commute her sentencing, um, and so I mean, Buttigieg is against the trans military ban, but considering the horrible conditions trans inmates face in prison, I kind of wonder if that'll sort of like, to me, I think that he'll have to work extra hard to prove, his support for the trans community extends beyond just, letting us serve in the military. So I don't know. It seems like he's kind of more focused on the most privileged among the LGBTQ community, white, cis, middle class. But I'm still keeping an eye on him. I'm just not really. I don't know. It's a weird thing. Like there's this whole thing in the LGBTQ community that us social justice warriors like to call normativity. Right? So where it's like it's like, oh, we're just like you. We want. We're happily married and have a nice house in the suburbs with the white picket fence and the car in the garage and the 2.5 kids. We're not like those other LGBTQ people, the polyamorous ones, the sex workers, the HIV positive ones, the trans people, et cetera, et cetera. And so I don't know. I kind of worry sometimes. I worry that, Buttigieg will end up sort of enforcing that homonormativity, like I said, just serving the most privileged among the LGBTQ community.
Interesting point.
Yeah, I like his
I never
husband for sure, Chaston, but
Mm-hmm.
I never really thought of it about the homonormativity. Oh, good lord, that's a mouthful.
yeah, and it is.
It's like, I mean, I've always said, like I had a coworker years ago who was like, before she started working with me, was like, I mean, I was the rumor mill feeder for a while, and of course she believed all the rumors, and then we worked together, and then she went back to her initial position in the office, and she had said to me, "Oh, I'm so glad I got to know you," and yada yada yada, and then thanked me, and I'm like, "Well, I'm no different than you.
Mm-hmm.
Who I decide to, go to bed with is different." I said, "Maybe." She didn't like that when I threw that. She was married, and I know her husband, but it's like I said, we're no different than anybody else. I said, but we do have issues that take precedence because we are, ripped to shreds over them.
Exactly.
And but generally, I don't really give a shit who a person is. It's
Right.
I
yeah.
consider the person, not all the identities that go along with it. I mean, yeah,
Yeah, I
there's
do
certain
think it's good that he's running. And I think because
yeah.
even if you had told me in 2016 that there would be somebody rising in the polls who's an openly gay
Mhm.
candidate who was
Mm-hmm.
also married, like to a man, I never would have, foreseen that. I mean, if you would have said that in 2000,
Right.
Oh god, no.
that, that yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh God, no, that could never happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody like us could ever, yeah, run. But it's showing that it is more viable. But yeah, on the other hand, you do have to consider his policies. And
Mm-hmm.
I was
Exactly.
watching the town hall, and I was watching, the town hall with Liz Warren, and I saw a little bit of Bernie's, and then I saw Pete Buttigieg. Oh,
Oh, you there, Morgan? Uh-oh. We lost Morgan. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, for me, I don't give a shit that he's married, that he's gay. I'm more geared towards what fucking policies is he putting forth or will
Right, me too.
you know. You back, Morgan?
Yeah. So,
We
There we go.
lost you, or did you lose your train of thought?
oh no, my computer is being weird.
Hmm.
Go ahead and finish if you had more to say.
Yeah, so yeah, I was just saying basically that I was watching that town hall and
Mm-hmm.
they asked him, hey, what are your policies on this? And it was just basically like, oh, well, I just launched this campaign, so I don't really have much in the way of, the policy on my website yet. And it's just like, man, Liz Warren has like, again, if you have a problem, she probably
Mm-hmm.
has a policy on like Game of Thrones spoilers. It's on her website. Like she has a policy on everything. And meanwhile, this guy's just like, oh, I haven't even thought about my healthcare policy. Like
Mm.
it's, and he did. I think you mentioned he did say that he didn't support Medicare for all, but he supported universal health care, which I mean, man, explain.
Uh-oh, we're
Yeah.
losing again. He
Mm.
supports universal health care, but not Medicaid for all? Is that where you're...
Yeah, he said something to the effects of that because there are ways to get to, in theory, there are ways that, you can assure like universal health care without necessarily doing the Medicare for all policy. But at the same time, he doesn't have a policy for that.
Yeah.
Mm.
See, and that to me, I mean, it could be because, this is his first, quote, big campaign. It's troubling for the simple reason it's like, I wouldn't even consider even running for town council
Right.
without having some idea of what my, quote, platform would be. I mean, like Morgan and I were talking before the show, like we were discussing the $15 minimum wage, and I was saying, well, here in town where I live specifically, and I would say probably a majority of small communities like mine. I mean, there's less than 5,000 people in the whole county, 3,000 in the borough, would not be able to support $15 minimum wage. We do not have the number of big box stores, to support that. And like where I work, it would put us out of business because we would have to raise our prices even higher than they are
Mm.
to be able to pay our employees that. So there has to be some give and take, and I haven't seen anybody approach that. I mean, I know it's in the air, but you go to a place like Boston or San Fran or Seattle or any of the big cities, and yeah, they're able to support that because there's enough big box stores, that can support that. And it does eventually, it will hopefully trickle down a bit to the smaller places because people have more, more money to spend. So, but we don't have that here. Or and it's like, I haven't, yeah, just saying you're for $15 minimum wage for me doesn't work because where I live.
Mm.
So yeah, you got to look at the policies, and I just don't at this point in time don't think that Mayor Pete has put forth any effort in it, or if he might be working on it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
hey, but I would think you would want that before you say, "Hey, yeah, I'm a candidate
Right.
I
for
mean,
president."
I have a healthcare policy, and I'm not like if I were to run for something, I have, ideas that I would have. But yet, I don't feel comfortable running for office, but meanwhile this dude is up like, I don't know, I'll figure it out.
It's like, I mean, as much as we love to hate him, even Trump had policies. Not that they
Mm.
were any good, but
I
it,
mean, he did
it
not come up with those, but yeah.
yeah, as I said. But it's like I was telling Morgan before the show. It's like last election, I really had a conundrum of who I was going to support and who I was going to vote for. And at the time, my three criteria were basically education, science, and healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
ACA at the time. And it's like, okay, they're all on the same line, give or take, on the ACA. They're all on the same line for education and pretty much any other policy that I would consider. And they all suck on science.
Mm.
I mean, all of them, and the Republicans as well. I mean, 5 of the presidential candidates of the Republican side supported pseudo MLM science. Mike Huckabee was my favorite because there used to be a commercial that used to play. In fact, it got pulled by the FDA or FTC, I can't remember which, stating that cinnamon would cure
Oh yeah, the cinnamon stuff. Yeah.
cinnamon would cure your diabetes. I'm like, yeah, no,
Mm.
I like cinnamon toast, so. But it's like they all had pseudoscience in their background. I mean, Bernie was GMO labeling, which is fucking bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sorry, when you label water GMO free, I have a problem with that.
Ah, jeez.
Oh, I've
Or
seen like milk be advertised at my grocery store. At first, I was like, "GF, why is that on the heavy cream?" Because I was gonna make like some whipped cream to go on a pie, and then I was like, "Oh my god, it stands for gluten free." And I was like, "Does somebody think there's gluten in milk?"
I mean, I can see to a point for those that have celiac,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah, again, but I'm like, why are you labeling everything like water is gluten free? Like, I'm
Mhm.
well,
pretty sure everyone could figure that out.
Yep.
yeah, and it's like, well, the one that gets my goat is when they say that our chickens don't have any antibiotics. It's like, yeah, it can't because it's against the law. So if they're selling chicken with antibiotics in it, you got a problem,
Mm.
big problem, because there's like a 30 or 60-day moratorium. Like you can't slaughter a chicken if you just treated it with antibiotics.
Mm.
But on the other hand, these people that want antibiotic free, now I'm not talking about when they use it to beef up your cows, so you have more meat. It's cruel to an animal to let it suffer if it's sick.
Mm.
I mean, would you not take an antibiotic if you had pneumonia? Or, it's like, so yeah, it's just, but Bernie was like, anti the GMO. He was for GMO labeling. Okay, Jill Stein, well, she was a Fruit Loop.
Mm-hmm.
She had her hand in a little bit of every woo, and even Hillary, and I can't remember what hers was, but it was kind of mundane, but it was still, it's like, no. It's like, but with Pete, you can't do that because we have no clue what he.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Right.
It's like, and then he's very smart. He speaks several languages, and that's really what kind of I think got him like is how smart he was and how he could speak all these different languages and everything. But still, it's like,
And
all
Trump
right,
can't
that's
even
great.
speak English.
I mean, I don't even know. I worry more and more because I'm able to kind of read between the lines of what Trump is trying to say, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that has horrid implications for my brain. I do not know where that's going to lead, but I'm getting dumber every day. And so but yeah, I think that Buttigieg is definitely interesting, but should he be president? I'm thinking probably not. I
Mm.
mean, should he maybe run for governor of Indiana or something? Like, yeah, that'd be,
Yeah.
maybe, or state legislature there or something like that, or even for Senate. But um yeah, as far as like, but just throwing yourself into the biggest election after being mayor too is, I think, kind of concerning. But then again, people point out, oh well, Trump has no governing experience. But I mean, then again, look at the country. Um,
Mm-hmm. Right.
so yeah, but at least Pete, has been a mayor. But and that's something. He's been in public service pretty much his whole life. But in some degree, but still I think he's a little bit way in over his head, I would say, because I think he doesn't know how to respond to these hard hitting policy questions and how we achieve things. But And also realizing that not all of the United States looks like South Bend, Indiana, because he kept
Mm-hmm.
hitting that point home too about all these, oh, these factories are closing down, whatever, whatever. And it's like, okay, yes, that's a problem that needs to be addressed. But again, it's sort of this kind of pandering to quote unquote the real America that I'm getting really sick of, because people in Los Angeles, they're just as American as me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't claim to be some kind of special American because I live in Mississippi and nobody gives a fuck about us. Like,
Right.
I don't act like that gives me some kind of weird entitlement to say, oh, well, I'm more genuine or I'm more American than people in New York, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm better than them somehow, or more pure, or yeah, it's this kind of it's that kind of mentality that I'm getting really sick of. And it's like, okay, well, you have to be a president that represents everybody, not
Mm-hmm.
just people in Iowa or people in Indiana or, people in Alabama. You have to, be able to address issues that come from all corners of the nation.
Yeah, I think though too. I mean, in his defense, is that I think out of any of the more inexperienced, I mean, it's like I said before, nobody has experience at being president until you're an incumbent,
Mm-hmm.
and even then, that might be questionable. If
Yeah, Trump, I would not count his as
yeah,
experience. He's been on executive time.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
out of anybody, from what I've read, he seemed well, not to take away from the other candidates. I think he would have a very fast learning curve, but like you
Yes,
said, how much is he going to be focused
able
on
to.
all America?
Yeah,
No,
because you're used to focusing on these very local issues. And he did say that we probably need somebody who understands that. And while,
Mm-hmm.
it might be a good idea for him to have some kind of position in an administration, even.
exactly.
Like, I would support that. Like, it's just,
Just brought up
it,
my point.
Mm-hmm.
it's just, if, I'm going to need somebody who has a clear vision and who, is articulating that now. I don't have, we don't have time to sit there, 20 people are running. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have time to sit there and think about your policies. Now, can you fine tune them or even like change your mind about things? Yes. I mean, I'm actually more open to people who are willing to, once they see new evidence or additional evidence, say, hey, maybe I'll tweak around this policy a little bit, or say, hey, maybe I didn't think that policy through enough.
Mm-hmm.
Let me think back through that. Yes, I would rather somebody do that than be like, oh, yes, I'm right completely. All my policies are fine. Fuck you. So, um, yeah, but I mean, then again, when you have like nothing,
Yeah, I
it's
mean, it
or
could.
little to nothing,
Yeah,
or just platitudes like I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
bring Americans together. Okay,
I
what
mean,
does that mean?
it might be that he just didn't realize the scope and has it, but just hasn't quote published it. But
Yeah,
I think what I do like about him, and this is kind of a really kind of a crappy thing to say that you feel like this, he is driving the Reich fucking
Yes, I love
batshit
that
oh
too.
yes,
crazy, especially Franklin Graham.
Oh
oh
I
yes.
yes.
fucking love it, and
What did Franklin Graham say, that he needed to repent or
yeah,
something?
Yes, he
it's
did.
like. I mean, even barring the hardcore religious shit coming out of Franklin Graham's asshole, um, it's like he is, and I think the dialogue that's coming out of it is what's important, because it's really getting some people, not everybody. Some people are so hardcore in their beliefs that they're not going to change, even if you show them that 2 + 2 = 4. You know, he's really, I mean, I do like that aspect, although he's taken some pretty harsh bullshit criticism, basically along the line of, with AOC and Ilian. I mean, they're just getting, but they're bringing this stuff to the fore, and I'm hoping that people will begin to realize, who cares who he fucks?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right.
he's a
And I think that's less of a problem, because if you notice, none of our criticisms have been that he's gay or anything like that. I mean, obviously we're all LGBTQ, but it's so that'd be kind of weird. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just the fact that, okay, well, you need to have some kind of, hard hitting policies. I mean, how are you going to address the problems we're facing? That's what we need to know. And right now, I mean, if something changes and he comes out with like all these great policies, then yeah, I might be more open to him. We'll see. I mean,
Right.
what happens. But I mean, so far, yeah, I mean, all of our criticisms have been that he just hasn't really articulated that much policy. But yeah, and that the fact that he's not too concerned about it. But I mean, yeah, he is driving the right absolutely bananas, and his husband is a delight on Twitter.
Oh, I haven't.
Justin Buttigieg, yes, he is a delight on Twitter. He's wonderful. I was like, I stand his husband, not necessarily him.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I just find that the reaction from the Reich is just it's
bananas.
precious.
In fact,
Yeah.
I want to point out this one thing. I was looking that up while you were talking. E.W. Jackson, thank you.
Oh God.
Yeah. Yes, he said that apparently if Buttigieg wins, we would be living in a homoocracy.
Yes.
And I'm like, and that's a bad thing because
I mean, the
make
fashion
America
alone.
fabulous again.
I know the fashion alone
Oh,
would be worth it.
Well,
But
what's funny about EW is that the word homocracy,
right.
yeah, whatever.
Homocracy.
Yeah.
Actually does have a meaning, and he's not using it properly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I would have to dig up the article, but yeah. Oh, EW is he's a interesting nut job to say the least.
An interesting nut job.
Well, I don't know how to put it without sounding really kind of off-putting, but he needs to check his skin color because, like, yeah, no. I mean,
why is Jackson like one of those, like a Uncle Ruckus or?
He's a black man who thinks he's a white man.
Yeah,
okay.
like an Uncle Ruckus,
Yep,
or
Uncle Ruckus.
what's that other guy? Sheriff Clark.
Yeah.
Yes. He's in that vein, and I find it very. I just find it maybe I'm missing something, and that's why I'm hesitant to put it out there because it's like, am I missing something? Is there like, of the people of color that I know, whether they're black or Hispanic or Korean or Japanese, yada yada. I have never. Well, no, I'll take that back. I do know another person, but I won't bring her up. Who's like, how can you come off as a white supremacist when you're a person of color?
Because as we know from Candace Owens, they will give you
yeah.
all the money. Like, I don't know what kind of scam that woman's running, but part of me is like, if this is a scam, it's almost great, but also like she's giving cover for white supremacy, so like go away.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's like giving them cover because then it's like they can be like, oh, I'm not racist. Look,
I have a black friend
who also hates black people. Like, yeah, it's just like absolutely wild.
And it's like EW is not the only one. There's a couple other Jesse Lee Peterson is
God.
Although I don't think Jackson and Peterson are quite fall into the I'm black, but I'm a white supremacist category. But they're like right on that border, and it's really bizarre. It's like, and I can't wrap my head around it. I can't figure it out. I just don't understand. Carson's another one. From HUD.
I haven't heard much from him lately.
Well, supposedly he's on his way out. We all know that
Rosenstein, yes.
Thank you. Rosenstein, however you say his name this week. I've heard like 15 different pronunciations for him. But Yeah, like between I've also heard rumors that Rick Perry is wanting
Rick
out, and I'm
Perry.
like, that's a motherfucker. I ain't heard nothing. Like
Right.
when Rick
Oh,
Perry is the voice of reason, we're in
Rick,
trouble.
Uh-huh.
well, supposedly Rick Perry, DeVos, Carson.
I didn't think DeVos would leave.
No, she actually, um, from one article. Okay, not a
The
great.
rumor mill, we'll call it.
Yeah, we'll call it the rumor mill. She's not being harsh enough.
What?
How? Her brother literally has a private army, like that's doing horrible war crimes. Like she's a monster. Like how? Like what does Trump want her to do? Shoot children in the face?
Pretty much.
Don't give him any
Oh God.
ideas.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
If you're listening, Trump, that was no. Just turn it
do
off.
not
It's fine.
take presidential advice from a podcast.
Yeah, supposedly those four are on their way out the door. Well, Rosenstein already submitted, but yeah,
Right.
like I don't know if that's good or bad because it's like, who the fuck is he gonna pick now?
That's
Yep,
the
that's always
scary
it.
thing. It's
That's
always the thing because it's like you should resign because you shouldn't be part of this administration. You should put your foot down and say absolutely not. I'm resigning in protest. But then also part of me, it's like, and I imagine this has to be conflicting for particularly these lower level federal employees, or not lower level but mid level, who have been
Hmm.
there for a while. It's this conflicting thing of, do I make a statement by resigning, or knowing that if I resign,
it could get worse.
God help
Right.
this country, because who are they going to get to replace me, especially if I've been here for under multiple presidents,
Well,
like
the thing, the one, not to completely sidetrack us, but we almost made it 2 hours without me sidetracking. That's been a dilemma. A
that's a
dilemma.
record.
Yeah, that
Hmm.
is for me. Um, the dilemma. A lot of mid-level, lower-level employees are leaving. There
Mm.
are
And
numerous.
they're being forced out as well because they're doing this
Oh,
buyout thing where they're
yeah,
like basically, all right, I'll let you retire early, or you can take your chances that you'll just get cut. And
yeah,
so a lot of people
Mm.
are just like, I'm going to leave. And what they're doing is they're just not replacing those federal employees, which again is that
yes,
consolidation
yes.
that we're
And
seeing.
a lot of them don't want to leave, but they know they're killing any semblance of a career
Hmm.
after the
By
by
Yeah,
staying, and they're conflicted. And I think, as much as I don't like Rick Perry because he really is a douche nozzle, and he's very undereducated, especially in
Hmm.
his position, it's like you said, he's actually kind of a voice of reason in that administration, and that's like,
well, because
fucking
he's letting the Department of Energy just kind of like run itself in a
yeah,
way. And he's not like, hey, let me butt in and come up with these wild policies that make no sense, because I think he knows he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
that,
And so he's just like, okay, what do I do? And the people who have been there for like a while are like, this is what we've been doing. And it's like, okay, keep doing that thing. So yeah, we're not getting any innovative policies from the Department of Energy, but also we haven't blown up yet. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
that's
Exactly.
And
that's a plus.
I do have to give him credit for that if that is what he is doing, which I do have a tendency to agree. I think he's just letting the department run
Run
itself.
itself, because he hasn't come through and tried to do any like crazy policy things coming from energy. Now that's been crazy wild policies been coming from education, labor, commerce, that kind of thing. But yeah, it I haven't seen anything absolutely bananas come from a Department of Energy, which is surprising because Rick Perry is a walking gaff machine.
Hmm.
Whew. Sorry, I had a cramp in my hamstring. It was like, oh no, don't go into a knot. Not now. I was,
Uh,
I've been getting them a lot lately.
mm.
Where'd I go? There I am. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the articles you've presented, Trish, are like just these three that we've talked, or two. Did we get to the third one?
I think we covered actually 4 of them, including
Yeah,
the Iowa one.
yeah. I find your perspective, what's the word I want to use? Refreshing's not quite right, but
Insightful.
insightful. Yes, that's because you're coming from the LGBTQ perspective, but you're not focusing just on the LGBTQ aspect. You're saying, hey, I know, like the first article we had talked about, it was like the first, as I said, the first thing that came to mind was, they came for the commune, Martin,
Right.
and it's like, this has ramifications besides just for transgendered or for the LGBT, for bisexuality, whatever. It does cross over into being an atheist. And
Yeah, exactly.
going back to the whole, and I don't like this term. I hate this term, but social justice warrior bullshit. I can see how it's, for some people, it's a huge deal. I can see how, there's different layers of it. And it's like, I try to do what I can to stay aware, but I'm not very good at it because it's not an issue, not a area that interests me, for lack of a better word. But it's something that, as an atheist, we have to keep an eye on, even though I'm part of the community. It's just not fitting in with my personality, I guess. But I know other people that, they do it perfectly, and they can get away with it.
Right. Well, I think everything's connected, really.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the stuff that I write about on LGBTQ issues have to do with like secularism as well. The stuff we've talked about, where like religious, deeply held, personally held religious beliefs, or whatever the term is. And then, like, it was about a month or so ago, the whole thing with Brunei and Sharia law. So like I said, everything's all connected. That's why I never really understood a lot of the atheists on the internet that say, get your social justice out of my atheism. I'm like, well, you don't see how, like, it's, these things are connected.
I actually, I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say get it out of my atheism, because it is, like you said, it is connected, but I never really paid attention. I mean, I was aware of it, but I didn't pay attention, and I think that's changed because of the people I now interact with. I'm more aware of what, how it might connect. I still haven't put all the pieces together because, this old lady doesn't learn new tricks very easily, and it's changing my thinking patterns. To, okay, yeah, I can see
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I can see that, but I don't agree with your tactics. It's really hard because you throw in everything else we have to deal with just as a secular community as a whole, or just being human fucking being, like,
Right.
am I going to have insurance tomorrow? Oh, am I going to have stamps tomorrow? Or, shit like that. Or am I going to lose my job because I'm gay? You throw all that at once, and it's hard to get your mind to wrap around that. And it's like, that's why I appreciate, like, with what you do, and especially Callie and Riss. I know I bring them up almost every show, but those are the two I pay attention to the most. But I also have, other people that I pay attention to as well, to try to round out how I think. And I don't know if I'm doing a good job at it or not, but I try. And I think it's important that, people like you do the writing that you do, because it makes people like this old lady think.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. Yeah, it's basically what I want to do is, I don't know, I don't really want to be stuck in what I call the atheist silo. Like my whole thing is, I want to bring conversations about social justice into secular humanist spaces and bring secular humanist presence in social justice circles as well.
Yeah. I think and I know I'm guilty of this, is that you have the quote social justice warriors.
Mm-hmm.
You have little old regular me atheist. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not a learning curve that gently goes up, but it's like all over the place.
Right, exactly.
It's really hard to keep track of because
Mm-hmm.
I've been kind of focusing more on the pseudoscience bullshit lately because I can
Well,
only
also, it's like what you said, they all borrow from one another too.
Mm-hmm.
So you can make
and,
connections in that way as
I
well.
think that's what's helping is that I started in the dominionist bullshit, and it's morphing, and I'm starting to see a lot of some of the abortion providers point blank said they're sharing their tactics with the anti-LGBT community, especially the T part. So yeah, I'm seeing the overlaps, but I delved into the whole Dominion shit for probably damn near 10 years before
Mm.
I
Well,
even.
it's interesting because I actually think the dominionism is actually kind of tied to this in a
Oh,
lot of
it
ways. Like
Mm-hmm.
with that
Exactly.
pushback on social justice and the pushback on like, oh, you don't need to be saying, women are equal, or you don't need to be saying that there shouldn't be any LGBTQ representation in media. All these kinds of these little mountains that they're trying to take over.
right.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
It's just really,
but
I think it's easy to, I'm not quite sure how to phrase this, but there's a learning curve and it's not a
Mm-hmm.
straight line. So, but we're coming up on the end. So, thank you, Tris. As
Thanks for having me
yes,
on.
thank you for joining us. It was
you,
fun.
and let us know if you relaunch on the podcast because, all voices are important.
Mm.
Where can we find you? Or where can we not find you?
Well, probably best place to, well, first of all, when it comes to the blog, the URL is medium.com/ the daily queer. And if you're a medium member, which means you subscribe for $5 a month, you can read all my articles, you know without a paywall, and helps me get paid too. But if you don't, the best place also to follow me is at T Mamone on Twitter, because that's where I post, special friends links to my blog posts where, you don't need to be a subscriber in order to read them. And also, if you want to follow me at Tris Mamone freelance writer, my page on Facebook. Those are the best places to follow me.
And send me all those links to make sure I have them so they're in the description.
Sure.
And Miss Morgan.
All right. Well, I want to thank Black Petunia, and I think Utah Outcast has popped in at the end here for joining us in chat, and all of our viewers and listeners as well, of course. Well, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Mostring. That's Mostring. And you can also find me on Facebook, Morgan L. Stringer. And we'll see if I have any projects. It's probably going to be a while before I actually do anything, but yeah, so just stay tuned.
And Miss Sammy is not with us tonight. She had a chance to go to a thing about Christopher Hitchens. So I was like, go, go, go. I happen
Yeah.
to Hitchens stuff. So she's not with us tonight. She's on Facebook under Samantha Mondegreen. If you are interested, hook up with her. At this point, she's mastering XSplit much faster than I am. Like in 24 hours. Like, she's been posting little videos she's been doing using XSplit. So yeah, she's hopefully when she gets it figured out, we'll be helping. So we'll have an intro and outro again. Because I tried tonight and it didn't work. In fact, it sent my sound
Mm.
window, so I had to reboot. But easiest way to find me is on Twitter, doing 998. That connects to my blog, Havoc and Chaos. Um, where right now I'm focusing on pseudoscience bullshit, anti-vaxxer crap. I'm actually working on one piece about Jillian and her bullshit probiotic
Mm.
bullshit crap. Oh, it cures everything. Well, actually, not according to these articles. It might cause
Mm.
more problem. But yeah, she's still up in arms. And poop number one came back.
Mm.
If you all remember, I wrote extensively about MMS, Mineral Miracle Solution, the bleaching agent that Miss Carrie Rivera thought was helpful to shove up an autistic kid's ass. It'll
Mm.
cure. But her one page, I discovered that she's got more than one, has been removed from Facebook, something we, and I mean anybody that's been anti Rivera, um, has been working for 3, 4, 5 years. So at least that page is down. Now she's into some other bullshit combining the keto diet with what's called GCM math, which is some type of blood or plasma product that you fucking inject. So yeah, I've been digging into that shit. So, but you can find me on MeWe, and I only have one friend over there at the moment, which I don't care because, from what I understand, it's becoming a cesspool of just BS. I mean,
Mm.
all the people that have been banned from Facebook are now heading over there because
Mm.
I guess MeWe doesn't have, not that Facebook does either, policy about that crap. So, and you can find me on Facebook under Beth A. Hambridge. If you send me a friend request, just put a note that it's show related and I will most likely accept you. But I will give you this fair warning. You post the tit picture and think it's funny. Guess what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had some guy friend me the other day, and then probably 3 or 4 days into it, he posts. It wasn't a bad picture in the sense that, flashing, but it was like, seriously, obviously you didn't read my profile.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was a little pissed off, so I deleted them. So, but next week we have, finally, I hope, we have Marie the Elephant from Everyone's
Mm.
Agnostic. And Trish, you're welcome to join us if you'd like, because we will be delving into areas that I am totally fucking clueless. So I'm hoping you're there, Miss Morgan. um, I will be honest, I haven't dug in too much as far as her stance on things, so we're going to be going into this one cold turkey. Although with 200 plus podcasts, I don't think that's going to be a problem. So
Mm.
she's really nice, and I'm looking forward. She has a really interesting deconversion story, for lack of a better word. And the week after is Mike Bowler. And then right now I'm working on scheduling people for June, but I don't have any confirmations yet. If you have suggestions, an author,
Hmm.
or like Tris or whatever, send them my way because, I kind of pick and pick and play in between work hours and sleep. So sometimes I forget until the last minute. So with that, we shall bid you all adieu till next week with Marie. And I hope y'all have a safe and enjoyable evening. And I just lost my screen. Like, no, I didn't want to close it. So with that, y'all, good night. Take care.